Hola, hola, probando sonido, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hola, hola, probando sonido en streaming. Hola, hola, te llega ya. Hola, hola, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hola, hola, probando sonido, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Se pone Eva, que le gusta. Para saludarte, te está viendo Alberto.
Alberto, aquí estamos sobreviviendo. Hola, hola. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pero decidme hasta cuándo hablo. Ya.
Please take your seats. We are about to start. Welcome everyone to Spain's pavilion in COP30. Big thanks to the team from the Ministry of Ecological Transition that is hosting us today. I want to thank in particular UNDP. Dear Marcos, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to all UNDP and AECID colleagues that put together this event, but most importantly are working tirelessly already for quite some years on delivering on a climate promise, on making sure that we have adequate policies, in particular nationally determined contributions. That is probably one of the least appealing names for something that is so important and can make a big difference for the planet. You know, it's better to call them LDCs, but this is actually the roadmaps that countries, the parties to the UN Convention on Climate Change, put together to measure their ambition. We are a country and a development cooperation that is deeply committed to people, but also planet. In our law, we call it the new law, but it's already 2 years old, almost 3 years old. We are defining a set of principles on how we intend to promote sustainable development. And of course, we've been focusing on poverty and inequality. That has been in our DNA for the last 40 years. But more and more, we are seeing the interconnection between people's needs and concerns and the health of our planet. And that is why, so importantly, we have put the just and sustainable ecological transition at the center of all of our efforts. It is part of our 4-year strategy, our master plan for the next 4 years as development cooperation. And most importantly, we're talking the talk. We are one of the countries in the world that continues to increase our investment in development. Again, another acronym that is probably not the most appealing, overseas development assistance. What that means for us is an investment on a more prosperous, a more sustainable, a planet where we can all live together. In the area of the green transition, we have ambitious objectives and we are delivering on them. Our Prime Minister was here in the leaders segment and he mentioned our commitment to increase by 50%. That was done 3-4 years ago, our investment in climate finance. And he reported that we have exceeded that target. We are now to the tune of 1.7 billion. Part of that is overseas development assistance and the work that we do from AECID alone in our bilateral cooperation with countries that are represented here today, but also very significantly also multilaterally through instruments like the Loss and Damage Fund, the Adaptation Fund, different financing instruments, but very importantly and very strategically for us, also with UNDP on putting together the governance elements that are often the most difficult. I was talking to our Cuban friends and on the importance to have clear plans towards decarbonization, but also adaptation and resilience. We are seeing it these days. We are also a humanitarian agency. We have a field hospital deployed in northern Jamaica in response to Hurricane Melissa, and we have already provided also humanitarian aid to our Cuban friends. All of this is very costly. By the time some of these events hit, it's already too late, and it's really not the best use of very scarce overseas development assistance money that we still have. So we need more and more act before, bridge that gap on adaptation and resilience. But for that, it's very clear that we have national adaptation plans that make sense and NDCs that are really ambitious. And I think our Brazilian friends have done a wonderful job on calling for ambition. We have more than 120 countries that have presented their NDCs. I think those are being looked at the moment to assess the level of ambition. I don't know, Marcos, whether you can tell us something about that. We want ambitious SDGs, but we also know that countries need a little bit of help sometimes on having a clear governance, technical assistance here and there, and the partnership that we have with UNDP is very, very valuable. And at the level of AECID, we have multiplied by 4 our investment in climate change over the last 3 years, and we do it hand in hand with the UNDP. There is already a lot that we have done. We were proud members of, or proud supporters of the Climate Promise. I think we were one of the founding members. So we were there early, but we are there very committed. We are already making a difference. Thank you, Marcos and the team. is having a very concrete impact in places like Guatemala, Honduras, Mauritania, Palestine, Senegal, Tunisia, El Salvador, Cuba, the Philippines, and Cape Verde. We have today representatives from the Philippines, from Cuba, and from Palestine with us that will tell us about their experience. We have already channeled almost 10 million euros. This year is going to be an additional 2.5 million. So it's an investment that is growing. It's an investment that doesn't seem much in terms of the trillions that it should be unlocking, and we are really doing our best to meet that 1.3 trillion target that we have from Baku to Belém. And this is at the very core of financing for development. With Marcos, we were in Sevilla only a few months ago. There is a line that connects Madrid and Belém. It should be a line of ambition, and we're very happy to walk in this path with you and following the big leaders that are, of course, our partner countries. So, Marcos, thank you for being with us, and thank you for the strong partnership with UNDP that we hope this year to sign into a new strategic agreement where climate and the climate promise is going to be a big part of it.
Muchas gracias. Bom dia, buenos días, good morning. Gracias España por nos tener aquí hoy y por su eterno compromiso con el multilateralismo, especially in a time where multilateralism is under strain and under a lot of pressure. We gather here in Belém. For those that yet don't know, because I've been publicizing a lot, my hometown. I was born here. So it's great to be back and to see how this change and the time has passed in this town. We need to come to, and I will talk a little bit about where the NDCs are, but we do come here, and the Brazilians have called this a COP of implementation. And that's exactly what we have been working on with AECID and with Spain about implementation, about supporting countries, Palestine, Cuba, and others, to move things forward in that sense. Major changes in the world. We can see the corporations are walking back from the net zero commitments, but at the same time, as Anton just mentioned, we see what happened in the Caribbean with Hurricane Melissa, over 70 lives lost and $7 billion in infrastructure damage already. We also know that we are not on track for 1.5 degrees. However, that's not to be despaired. I think the NDCs that are coming in now are not where we need to be, but if you compare to 10 years ago, the process of the NDCs, we were at a trajectory to almost 4.5 degrees. Now we are somewhere between 2.3 and 2.5. So the Paris Agreement is working, but it is not working at the speed and at the scale. The science is demanding us to work. And I think as we move to implementation, that is the challenge that we have. How do we implement it in a faster, bigger way? Now the NDCs coming in, there are about 120 already in. We, leading the entire UN system, have supported 102 countries. And those countries are really the heroes, the capacity, the effort to put those things. We do know that the NDCs are qualitatively better. For the first time, 100% of the NDCs have energy transition target. 87% of them have added extra adaptation aspects. 63% of them have a direct link to the SDGs. So the interface between climate and development is there. 60% of them have a budget, right? Have a financial plan, and that is the connection with Seville. One of the Seville plan of actions that we launched together talk about implementing climate and nature together. So that more than 6%, almost 70% of NDCs have specifically gender aspects. So they are better. they are whole of economy, they are multiple sectors. And I think we are in that process now, on how are we going to move to that scale and pace. We are extremely thankful to AECID and to Spain for the partnership. Yes, you've been there with us from the beginning, and I'm sure you're going to stay with us for the long haul. But that is where we need to work on. Now, a few examples. For example, in Tunisia, expanding adaptation targets integrating NDC's finance into its national framework. Cabo Verde plans to issue a green bond for mitigation and adaptation. This nation sees NDCs no longer as a mere climate tool, but as a development strategy defining the economies and societies of the future. But it starts today. We have to start today. We also know, we released it together with the OECD, a report this year that shows that implementing the NDCs, it's about driving GDP growth, creating jobs, and outperformance fossil fuel. Clean energy is already outperforming fossil fuel. This research shows that enhanced NDCs could grow the global GDP by 0.23% by 2040, by 3% by 2050, and up to 13% by century's end, especially if you factor in the cost of inaction. Now, sounds like 0.23% by 2040 is not a lot. It is the size of the Sweden economy. So imagine that we're putting an extra Sweden economy into global GDP just by implementing NDCs. We can also take 175 million people out of poverty by implementing the NDCs. Once again, that intersection between NDCs and development as a whole. Finance must extend beyond mitigation. Knowing 1.5, and we are in an overshooting period, we gotta make this overshooting the shorter possible, but knowing that, we must invest in adaptation and resilience, protecting lives and livelihoods from shocks that are already here, like Melissa. And our friends in Cuba know very well what happened a few weeks back. UNDP and the UN system remains fully committed. Last week, the UN Secretary General mandated UNDP to coordinate a system-wide approach to accelerate NDC's implementation, which we are calling the Climate Promise Forward, which is based on the 4 pillars, the work we're going to be leading the UN system going forward. Policy coherence, integrating climate, nature, and biodiversity among themselves, but also integrating those into national development plan strategies and sectoral policies. Mobilizing finance, unlocking and de-risking investments through carbon market, debt swaps, green bonds, and private finance for mitigation and adaptation. Scaling solutions, back to the issue of pace and scale, using finance to expand proven mitigation adaptation initiatives and societal engagement, ensuring inclusive transitions into prioritize gender equality and leaving no one behind. We invite you all to co-create and co-implement this new phase of the climate promise with us. Only by working together in solidarity, ambition, and action can we tackle this crisis and build a more resilient future. Muchas gracias, España. Muchas gracias, Antón, Blanca, Mónica, todo el equipo, por la confianza y por el asocio y por la amistad. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
So this is the moment where I invite our panelists from the state of Palestine, from Cuba and the Philippines to join me here on the stage. Well, with big thanks to UNDP for being the instrument and the main channel of support and partnership with all of you. I think we are now at the moment where we want to hear some experiences from as Marcos was saying, to the real heroes, which are the ministries of environment, the people putting together these ambitious NDCs in the countries, and we are very happy to to be sitting here today with three key partners of Spanish development cooperation in the area of climate, but many other areas. I was talking with them. Three countries that face, like Spain faces, major challenges, environmental climate challenges, water scarcity. In some cases, Cuba and the Philippines having had major weather events recently, being very exposed. A lot of knowledge that is in your countries that we probably do not have in countries like Spain. That is also an opportunity for you to share with us the sort of future that, with current dynamics, the entire world is likely to suffer. And then, of course, Palestine as well, with big challenges, and of course challenges that go beyond climate at the moment, where you have seen the full solidarity of the Spanish people and the Spanish government on other man-made disasters, but the climate crisis is also man-made, and it is great that despite all difficulties, you are still committed to delivering on climate. So it's great to have all of you here with us. I will be asking questions, and we'll see if we have a bit of time for an interaction with the audience. We have, first of all, Wenceslao Carrera Doral has a lot of experience in the area of climate. He serves as a technical coordinator in Cuba Energía, that is in Cuba's Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment. He's an expert in energy and climate change with a distinguished career, and he has been leading the effort to develop and updating the Cuba's NDC in alignment with the Paris Agreement. So I'll be introducing each of you and asking you a question. So Wenceslao, first starting with you, Cuba is reinforcing its capacities on a sustainable energy transition. You have an NDC ambition that is important. You have targets going on. We know that in the case of Cuba, the energy transition is important to reduce the cost of imports of energy and other sources of energy that are, let's say, less compliant with your own NDC. So there is a climate question, but an energy security element as well. What are the main challenges, and what strategy do you have in Cuba to adapt to the current threats and the challenges that climate change poses, and unfortunately you've suffered in your eastern region, in an island that has so many vulnerabilities such as Cuba?
Good morning everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this event and share with you the main results that we obtained in the project Climate Promise with cooperation of AECID and UNDP. Cuba began its cooperation within the framework of this project, climate projects, in 2024 with the support of UNDP and AECID as financier. When the implementation of Climate Promise began, we had already started preparing to address the development of the NDC. Some activities were developed in that time, communicating and raising awareness among the country's key decision makers on the topic, outlining the main strategic line for its updates. Thus, Climate Promise began its support at crucial stage, training the technical teams in each sector to incorporate their experience into the Cuba's NDC. This involved achieving proper alignment between the national development programs of the contribution in accordance with the requirement of the Paris Agreement. One of the country's most important development programs that has found expression in NDC 3.0 is the Energy Transition Strategy, approved in 2024. Cuba's energy system, and especially the electric production system is going through a very complicated situation. The electrical system is mainly based on the use of fossil fuels, around 95% on fossil fuels. It is very dependent on imports and was the main GHG emitter in Cuba's inventory for 2020. At the same time, Cuba has great renewable energy potential. Based on this element, the country has designed an energy transition strategy that has the main objective of achieving sufficiency, sovereignty, and security of the energy supply that is required for the sustainable development of the country. And the strategy has three main stages. The first one aims to reach 24% of electricity generation based on renewable energy by 2030. This is one of the main goals contained in the NDC 2.0. The second stage aims to reach sovereignty in electricity generation by 2035. It means to reach 49% based on renewable energy and 51% based on national fossil fuels by that time. This goal is one of the main ones included in the NDC 3.0. Cuba has declared its intention to commit a significant part of this objective to be supported on the carbon market projects as set out in Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And the first stage aims to reach 100% electricity generation based on renewable energy by 2050. But the energy transition strategy is not limited, of course, to electricity generation. It also includes very challenging indicators for increasing energy efficiency involving all socioeconomic areas and sectors throughout the country. The energy transition strategy is at the heart of Cuba's NDC. To promote it and achieve its objective, a solid foundation is essential. Clear governance, a robust organization, engaged, trained, and sensitized human resources, an objective roadmap, and of course, a financial architecture that promotes innovation and improves financial management, among many other requirements. The Climate Promise project and the support of AECID and UNDP have made a significant contribution to creating enabling conditions and have allowed to achieve the following results. Firstly, the project supported the process of exchange between specialists and officials from sectors to refine ideas that could be formulated as contributions, which were really very broad. During this period, important consultations were also held with the academic sector and civil society to share the approaches of the NDC. At the same time, and considering that the carbon market is proposed as one of the instruments for implementing our NDC, the NDC, the project, among other partners, contributed to support the development of the legal framework of the country's insertion to carbon market. The legal instrument that was developed and proposed to the government was approved and published in the official Gazette of the Republic. The project contribution to the training objective has been substantial. Approximately 110 specialists and officials from the energy and industry sectors related to industry and energy, and also sectors related to natural greenhouse gas removal and global sectors, such as planning, finance, banking, and investment, has been trained. Among the priorities action that the project plans to support in the future, I will mention only two. the involvement of the private sector in the implementation of the NDC, and also raise awareness among local stakeholders about the NDC and identify ways in which they can contribute to fulfilling the country's international commitment. Finally, I would like to reiterate the importance of the results obtained in the Climate Promise project for the country, and thanks UNDP and AECID for the support. And we hope that this collaboration will be strengthened in the future. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Wenceslao. Thank you very much for your experience and not just for telling us about what you do, but how you are doing it, the process to involve different actors in Cuban society to be part of a strategy that, as you mentioned, is very ambitious. You know, to move from 5% to 25% of renewables, which is very ambitious, but we also know that Cuba has a great potential for renewables, lots of sun, wind, etc., like big opportunities there. Let us move to the state of Palestine. Ahmed Abu Taher, he is the acting chairman of the Environment Quality Authority of the state of Palestine. He is leading the authority's efforts to protect environmental quality, strengthen regulatory frameworks, and advance Palestine's priorities on pollution control and environmental monitoring and sustainable resource management in a country that has, of course, big environmental challenges of water scarcity of natural resources. He has a long career, 25 years working with the authority. So Ahmed, a question to you. Obviously, you live in a very fragile context. I was mentioning to him all the support that we are providing for the Palestinian Authority, for the government. So it continues to keep the essential functions in this crucial moment, including on the environment, because unfortunately the climate crisis is not in pause in the Middle East because of the conflict. It is converging with the humanitarian crisis that we have at the moment. How do you place climate action, adaptation, and resilience in the agenda in this fragile context? What are the main climate change risks and vulnerabilities that Palestine is facing, and how can other partners, including multilateral partners or bilateral partners of Palestine, can support you to overcome these challenges, keeping in mind that in cases like Palestine and many others in the world, we need to keep a humanitarian development, peace, and I would say climate nexus approach.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the Spanish government for their solidarity and for their support. First of all, I want to thank the Spanish government for their solidarity and for their support for the state of Palestine. In the other area also, I want to thank the Spanish Development and International Development Agency for the support on the ground for the main two projects in Palestine that Environmental Quality Authority is involved in. The first one, the development of the Palestine Stocktake Report and National Determined Contribution. This National Stocktake include National Stocktake Assessment, NDC Assessment and Roadmap, National Stocktake, also the Mitigation and Adaptation Strategy, Greenhouse Gases Inventory, and the projections and capacity building. The other project is on the ground also the Climate Smart Agriculture Project, enhancing climate smart practices across the dairy value chain in Jericho district. This is one of the oldest dairy industries in Palestine, and we hope that we can replicate the results in others. Coming back to the fragile situation, yes, our situation, environmental situation and climate change in the state of Palestine is different than anywhere else. The state of Palestine is the only state that faces two planning entities. The plans for our Palestinian national plans and unfortunately the Israeli plans. And we have to maintain on the ground and to have also to maintain our natural resources. This leads us to really rethink about climate change and environment to be on the top priority of the agenda. As even though that state of Palestine is not affecting climate change, our emissions is this around one from to 10,000 from the whole world emissions. But on the contrary, we are committed to do our homework and to commit to the international efforts in order to impact to combat climate change. At the national level, we start developing our NDC report in 2017. The NDC report concentrates on mainly 6 sectors: water, energy, agriculture, transport, health, and wastewater. And also we develop detailed plans for each sector. And we put 2 scenarios. The first scenario that with occupation, and the second scenario without occupation. The scenario with occupation is around, we have to decrease our emissions about 26%, and without occupation about 17%. Nowadays we are working on updating this NDC, and we'll see according to the new conditions for the West Bank and Gaza, we'll see the new targets. But still we are in the early beginning of this process. The Cabinet of Ministers of South Palestine in 2002 issued a decree to mainstream environment and climate change in the national and plans and strategies. And we start this process also 2024 when developing these sector strategies. We develop around 24 national sector and cross-sector strategies, and each sector took environment and climate change in their strategy. So we think that this is one of the good steps forward in order to mainstream climate change and environment. On the other hand, also, we have a law, environmental law, since 1999. And last year we start drafting the new law, environment law in terms of sustainable development. One of the chapters is relating to climate change and how we can deal with the climate change issues. Regarding also what we need, I think awareness for the whole sectors is essential, as my colleague from Cuba said. It is important at all levels, at the school level, the university level, at the government level, and at the policymaker levels. The second also, I think we need capacity building for our staff as institution, and for other stakeholders, how they can also raise funding for climate projects related to their sectors. One of the main challenges, of course, the occupation. Without occupation, we cannot do our work perfectly. The occupation, either we see the results of the war in Gaza, more than 60 million tons of rubble accumulated in Gaza, more than 100 tons of explosive materials thrown in Gaza, and there are some studies estimate that the greenhouse gas emissions due to the war and the reconstruction is more than the emissions from 100 countries. So it is a very, very big issue that we have to deal with. I think also I think also we need technology transfer. Technology is one of the important tools that help in implementing projects at the national level. I think I can stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it's quite remarkable the effort that you are doing despite all difficulties, and also thank you for highlighting the environmental consequences of war. We are all very concerned about the humanitarian consequences, the many lives that have been lost, many women and children killed. But it's true that war is having a big environmental impact, and as part of what we hope to see soon, which is reconstruction efforts, this is going to be a major activity where you are going to need the support of the community and the different international partners. So it is now my pleasure, like moving from Cuba to Palestine. We are moving from west to east, and we are going to the Far East now. It's a great pleasure to have another strategic partner for Spain, the Philippines, a country that is probably one of the most exposed to climate risks, not just climate risks, earthquakes as well. We've seen what happened in Cebu recently, the different typhoon season. Last year in Spain we had the big rains in Valencia, you may all have seen on TV. Something that tends to happen every year, but it was out of normal. There were quite a bit loss of lives, and only a month later I traveled to the Philippines. We signed a new partnership agreement with NEDA, with our counterpart, the planning agency in the Philippines, and we visited your region, Bicol, where we've seen on the ground what climate resilience means. We've seen very humble communities being perfectly organized, and I remember that month there were 6 typhoons, one after the other, Christine being the most significant one, and exactly 0 lives were lost in the Philippines. So there is a big opportunity as well when we are trying to redefine what development cooperation is into something much more horizontal, much more circular, when we all learn from one another, the big knowledge that in this case the Philippines has on adaptation and resilience. So we have with us Liz Silva. She's an environmental planner and development management officer at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. She's a section chief at the moment with the Climate Change Information and Technical Support Division. You are focusing in particular on the waste sector of the National GHG inventory, and you are working as part of the National GHG inventory team. And you are part of the NDC technical working group focusing on the organizations, on the policies and measures on climate change. So Liz, the Philippines is, of course, as I said, highly exposed to climate risks. And by the way, very important, I think, what the colleague from Palestine mentioned. None of the countries sitting on this table is responsible for the problem. The ambition that we can, and it's great you show ambition, because we don't need to lead by example. As you know, under the UN Convention, there are common but differentiated responsibilities. In this case, we have a bigger responsibility on decarbonizing. We are making our efforts. The colleagues from the Ministry of Ecological Transition are leading that work, but we all share the planet. We all need to do what we can, little or big, and we all need to adapt. And while none of your countries, the impact that you can make on the aggregate is quite small, even if it is a big effort for Cuba, for Palestine, or for the Philippines, we all have, and unfortunately all of your countries are more exposed than the average to the consequences. Adaptation and resilience is very important, and we've seen it firsthand in the Philippines, but with also ambition in productive sector, circular economy, nature-based solutions, and so on. How do you think, Liz, the Philippines can increase climate ambition on your productive sectors in order to achieve something that we all want, a green transition, but a green transition that is just, that is inclusive, that doesn't leave anyone behind? We need to be mindful of the ambition of this transition is going to affect some sectors. How do you go about this big challenge in the Philippines?
Okay, thank you for the question. Again, take 2. Okay, good morning everyone. So thank you for the question. For the Philippines, just mention every year, we mention this one. We have an anchor strategy focusing on adaptation, but our mitigation is actually our functional strategy to adaptation. So we are committed to mitigating emissions. As for your questions, let me go back to our NDC, the first NDC that we submitted. For our first NDC, we are actually focused on the end of pipe approaches. So specifically for the waste, we just focus on the outputs of the managing of waste and even on the cleaner production. But for our NDC 2025, as we call it, this is the NDC 3.0 for many countries. We are currently developing. We are now focused on circular economy, which is also the main agenda of the climate promise, UNDP climate promise in the Philippines. And segue also, I would like to thank the government of Spain through AECID and the UNDP climate promise for that one. After our submission of the NDC 2021, the climate promise entered the picture. In our NDC 2021, circular economy is just a placeholder in our statement without studies, without anything on it. But with the UNDP climate promise, the studies on circular economy started, and we have significant results from the climate promise. Now come the development of our NDC 2025. Circular economy is now one of our cross-cutting strategies. We have now a study relating circular economy in our NDC, among others. Of course, from UNDP, we have the circular economy, JEDC, the youth, even the SDGs as the cross-cutting strategies for our NDC enhancement. Also, for our productive sectors, the waste and IPPU, the UNDP is now providing support for the development of our policies and measures. So with the help from the circular economy side and then our development of the policies and measures, we are now integrating the circular economy to our new sets of policies and measures, like in our composting, in our food rescue, and even for our industrial processes and products used in our co-processing, and our, if I'm not mistaken, clinker substitution. So all are included. Now for our enhancement on the ambition, we see that we need the circular economy. That's one of the major key messages for our NDC 2025. But we also need the just transition. We also need the operationalization of our Green Jobs Act. We also need our operationalization of our Extended Producers Responsibility Act, all of which contributes to the success of the implementation of our circular economy. In addition to that one, we are developing our Just Transition Framework, currently developing Just Transition Framework, which will fit into our circular economy and also to our NDC 2025. And lastly, we are engaging with our Green Jobs Act to form and formulate our circular economy framework against the workers, against the industries that we have. And we see to it that the decarbonization roadmaps of our industries are on the way to support our NDC 2025. And in addition, and in conclusion of the question, actually we still have the limitations, but I think we are not starting from scratch. We are there, and we are using circular economy now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for highlighting the opportunities of the circular economy and the importance of the just transition. I think there is if there is some commonality in the interventions from these people that are in the front lines of the NDCs with the support of the climate promise, is partnerships. Like you are not working alone. This is difficult. You need to, as I was mentioning before, NDCs is probably a name that sounds too technical. Nationally determined contributions. Nobody really understands what that is, except maybe those in Belém today. But outside these walls, these words sound very technical, very arcane. At the same time, what it means is a lot of efforts that go beyond your ministries. You are, of course, driving this but you need to bring along the private sector, civil society, and so on, partnerships. So I wanted to ask all of you maybe a quick reflection, because I think we're running out of time on, you know, the importance of collaborative partnerships, on coordination. You have your individual efforts, but sometimes we all work in silos. These NDCs go well beyond the environment, go well beyond climate. They are transformational changes for societies, for economies, and so on. What's your experience like, and how do you connect those individual efforts with the, you know, the other actors, and what we can do, like bilateral agencies with UNDP? Any key lessons that you can share with us very briefly, each of you? Wenceslao, we maybe start with you.
As you say, national determining contribution is a very strange word. When we began in Cuba to communicate to people, they didn't understand what this meant. Then in Cuba, we call them the international commitment of Cuba on the Paris Agreement to understand better this. And there is a big collaboration inside the country, because we have there the sectors of energy in the NDC, is the agriculture, forestry, waste, sugar and cane industry, and of course we need to, the Minister of Science, Technology and Environment has the responsibility to coordinate all the efforts inside the country to go in the right direction. And we need, of course, support, because in all these sectors, the people has the experience, technical experience in their areas, in their issues, but they don't understand always how to formulate these in line of climate change and in line of requirement of Paris Agreement that are really very complicated. And we need, in that case, support from other agencies. NDC Partnership has is supporting us with the action plan for the implementation of the contribution, specific contributions inside our. FAO is also supporting us in the forestry. Recluse is supported by FAO. There are many agencies, European Union, like Euroclima, Plus, a lot of them. But what's the most important? We mapped our necessities and we define it. What's the collaboration we need from NDC Partnership? What's the collaboration we need from UNDP, from the project that will align it with GIF or the adaptation fund? This is very important, and not only map all these needs, and also to together implement these actions. The most important thing now for us is the implementation of the laws. And this is very costly, this is very difficult, and we need support of all the agency and support, of course, all the sectors inside of our country.
Thank you, Wenceslao. I think there is very clear points about, you know, the need to have the big picture, and that you have it, and sectoral ministers do not, or ministries do not necessarily know it, so there is a lot of outreach that you need to do, and then this element of having a clear leadership. You know best what you need. Unfortunately, the climate sector is not an exception. In international finance or international development, we have a bit of fragmentation. You need to deal with way too many people, and that is why it's so important to have clear leadership from the countries, because let's face it, none of us, the UNDP, Spain, anybody, will be able to make any difference in Cuba or anywhere else if there is no strong, clear ownership by the government. Ak, what's the vision from Palestine?
Thank you very much. I think we are not far away from Cuba, the same challenges. But still, in the state of Palestine, we have another issue that we have a long list of priorities and a long list of challenges. As my colleague mentioned that the environmental institutions are planning at the national level, and they have the whole picture. But when you go to the sector itself, there is a budget constraint. Where to go for how to implement the projects in the sector or projects related to environmental and climate change. And the idea of linkaging climate change and environment to their project is not really mature, either for agriculture or for energy or for water or for transportation. This is one. The second also, in terms of international cooperation, sometimes they do not differentiate between development projects and the climate change projects. So it is a project, for example, for wastewater treatment and reuse. Is it for climate change, or is it for development, or is it for infrastructure? So this differentiation also, when you count at the end of the day what are the projects that implemented for climate change, we cannot do. There's no figure in order to see is we are on the same track for climate change or we are on the other track. The last thing also, regarding, as you mentioned before, that we're facing the man-made challenges regarding climate change and regarding the occupation, either in West Bank or in Gaza. So in some areas in West Bank, for example, they don't have more than 20 liters per capita per day for water. How you can speak with them about climate change or to conserve water? There are a lot of challenges. But at least we have at the national level, the instruction is there.
So for the Philippines, just want to share our experience. So we have, I think, at least three. So first, for the government, we organize ourselves. We organize based on our cross-cutting challenges. For example, if we need a climate finance, we organize all the finance ministries, all the finance agencies. So we're just waiting for an executive order, if I'm not mistaken, to be finalized and institutionalized. But we now know what our roles are in climate change and in other cross-cutting sectors. Second, we established the Development Partners Coordination Group, which is actually main focus for our development agencies, for our development partners. So the development partners also organize themselves, and they have the stock taking on where and when should they support the country. So they are talking to themselves, and they are not having the overlaps that we usually have with our development partners. And third, we engage our CSOs and academics because we are at the national government. We need the localization of all the actions. So we engage them. We normally have stakeholders consultations, local and town hall meetings, just from our CSOs, and they report back to the national government to be included in our national reports. And that is actually what is happening in our current development of the NDC 2025, which we hope to submit by December this year. Thank you.
So, thank you very much to all panelists. I think we're just 1 minute late, and being Spanish, we tend to be 5 to 10 minutes late. This is a major achievement. Our Cuban friends also maybe a bit, but look, very use of time. But thank you very much, because I think as practitioners you've been able to tell us very clearly in very simple terms what NDCs are, how important they are. As Ahmed was saying, we're talking about man-made crisis. We need financing, we need many things. It is challenging. The objectives that you have set for your countries are very ambitious, some in very difficult circumstances, but it shows how your governments are taking climate ambition, and also how through the climate promise and the work of our UNDP colleagues, also from our agency from Spain, we will help you to deliver on those promises. Let us hope that when we meet again, this is not just ambition on paper, that you are making actual progress on the ground. You can count on us on Spain, and I am sure on UNDP as well. Thank you, everyone. Muchas gracias. Muito obrigado.